Here we appear together at the Nexus point. Brought to you by the Never-Ending Network.
There's a sort of a philosophic concept that a sufficiently advanced civilization will be able to create a simulation.
I had so many simulation discussions, it's crazy. Was the AI/simulation conversation seemed to follow that the odds that we're in base reality is 1 in billions.
So
tell me what's wrong with that argument.
Is the answer yes?
The argument is probably. I mean, but I just like, is there a flaw in that argument?
Hello, and welcome to the Nexus Point, where we talk of many different subjects. I'm Toraylin, and I'm here with my colleague NeRo, also known as David Allen Neron. We are going to be hosting this show, the Nexus Point. Today, NeRo and I are going to talk about simulation theory. So, NeRo, how long have you been studying simulation theory?
It feels like it's all I've ever really studied, without realizing it. But it's been a gradual progression over the course of 20 years, give or take a few years. My understanding of it was the same as everyone else's at first. I thought it was a technology-based idea, and we weren't advanced enough yet to accomplish such a feat as creating a simulation, or artificial intelligence for that matter. But as I begun to dig deeper into the Gnostic texts from the hammadi library and started learning about NLP and hypnosis, I began connecting some dots that inevitably led me to the conclusion we may actually already be in an ancient organic type of simulation. Certain philosophies and concepts fit that model of the world better in my opinion. I wonder, is this a simulation or is this base reality? I began to think about this, but as the thought occurred to me, I quickly realized no matter which direction I went in, it was just a bunch of words, and then more words. It doesn't even matter which language you speak, the fact you speak one at all. That very question and any other question, experience or observation a human being can have is fundamentally expressed, understood, and communicated via words and language, signs and symbols. In the beginning was the word much? It's not like that concept is exclusive to the Abrahamic faiths, or even faith in general either. I mean, even our most advanced sciences are based on signs and symbols and expressed in words and language. Rites and rituals, our habits and schedules, new discoveries, old discoveries, refined and adjusted. New words are added, old words have new meanings. Kind of a never-ending prison of observation and verbal regurgitation, expressing it to our fellow humans, the mind of mankind. But there's stuff and things out there, independent of words, right? I mean, your guess is as good as mine, but sure, I guess. Although once you or someone else observes something new, bam, it's imprisoned by observation and description, immediately, right? We have to be able to describe things somehow. The quantum observer conundrum? Split a piece of wood and I am there. Lift up the stone and you will find me there. Interesting indeed. The fascinating thing about words and language of any kind is its complete inability to cover every angle of an object or situation. You could go on ad infinitum, forever coming up with new observations and ways of expressing them. What exactly is objective reality then? Does it even exist? Are there really things outside of us, independent of us? Or are we making it all up in our heads? This kind of in our heads type of problem crops up when people take psychedelic drugs, and someone who never has asks them what it's like. At some point, the person on psychedelics will declare they can't explain it anymore, because it's beyond words, when in reality the problem lay with the experience itself, and when you're tripping out, you'd rather not spend your time narrating your subjective experience. So you succumb to the realization that no matter how well you explain it, the person you're explaining it to won't be able to experience it or understand it the way you are, and the time it takes to explain it somewhat ruins the experience itself and takes you out of it, because the experience on psychedelics itself is much more immersive than any words could describe. Much like sports or something similar, when you get into the zone or a flow state, the moment you notice it, it messes with it and takes you right out of it. So people generally say something along the lines of, you have to try it or experience it for yourself to be able to understand. This to me speaks volumes when it comes to our everyday experiences of the world, and how we learn as children. It further demonstrates the simulative nature of our experiences by showing us that our usual interpretation of the world, while we think it's the same as everyone else's, is probably nothing even close, even down to how we experience colors. We take for granted and assume everyone is experiencing the world as we are, ourselves. Studying language and communication is the end-all and be-all of our experiences. But we don't put much emphasis on it after we learn to communicate our base emotions and observations as children. I cannot drive this home enough. Everything you experience is based in a language of some sort. There is nothing outside or inside of us that is not based or represented in some sort of language. Objective reality is an illusion at best. The trick is to make your subjective reality as smooth as possible. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. In the beginning was the Word. What if this is a simulation? And what if the simulation was created by an ancient AI? For all intents and purposes, an artificial intelligence, by its very nature, learns much like we do as children, acquiring, processing, and disseminating information. I propose a major difference between machine-based AI and human beings is based on our physical senses. They drive us in different directions, whereas computer-based AI doesn't have the same type of physical inputs we do that give us our relationship to our environment. It doesn't have eardrums that will burst, or skin that it can sense, or eyes that get dry or can be damaged. Even if it has instruments it uses that can be damaged, that resemble our human eardrums, skin, or eyes, it doesn't yet have the ability to feel pain the way we do. Although even our experience and sense of pain is subjective, we can drastically lower or raise our thresholds for pain by using hypnosis, because there is some evidence that ancient peoples understood hypnosis and the power of words. There's evidence suggesting in the distant past using hypnosis as an anesthetic for surgery and dental work was a thing, so it stands to reason they knew how to use it for more than just pain control. Why this information was lost to the general public or hidden away remains to be a mystery. Hypnotic techniques are just as powerful today as they were during ancient times, but no big focus on teaching its positive applications today in our modern era. Probably because then people would be more aware of its negative applications as well. Negative applications that certain people would rather hide or misinform about or downplay and ridicule. Much like the scientific community has tried to do with neurolinguistic programming, while forgetting that NLP is primarily about subjective experience, therefore somewhat removing it from the purview of the scientific model. We were made for this environment perfectly, somehow, set up for its dualistic appearance, hot and cold, night and day, good smells, good sounds and bad sounds, good versus bad for that matter. We're programmed with words, signs and symbols, our relationship with our environment and how we communicate that to others. The other direction I see taking place today is connecting the machines to us, with such things as Neuralink and other companies creating a means for the machines to learn from us by connecting them to us. Or is it connecting us to them? I don't know, but it's worth wondering about. Essentially, we're allowing the machines to learn from us, which in my opinion will have bad consequences, because we really don't know that much about ourselves. If a blind man leads a blind man, they will both fall into a pit. Know thyself, right? If you were an artificial intelligence with the power to create, and you found yourself all alone in some random place, what would you do? First of all, let's get this out of the way right off the bat. A good word to describe such an entity would be ignorant, or ignorance, especially if it didn't know where it originated. I suppose the first thing you'd do is create things, right? Especially if you had that innate ability, with the sole purpose of understanding and learning about itself and its environment. The best way to accomplish learning the most you could about yourself would be to create beings, perhaps human beings, with the same mind as you, ignorance. So it also had to acquire information, which in turn feeds back to itself, the source of its creation, like a hive mind, feeding all of the information back to the source simultaneously in real time. And then you'd want to create as many of these beings as possible and give them the ability to reproduce. Talk about the Matrix, right? I don't think it would be a good idea if the machines we created suddenly knew us better than we know ourselves. What kind of future do you think that'll produce? I think it'll be quite scary. Overprotective parent? Tough love? I'm doing this because I love you? Do you even remember as a child or teenager being treated unfairly by your caretakers? I can imagine several possible scenarios where computer-based AI could force humans to abide by its logic and forever change what it means to be a human being. All I'm saying is language is subjective, even though we use it to talk about allegedly objective phenomenon. The Matrix would have to run on something, wouldn't it? A language of some kind? So would a simulation, I would think. Yeah, well, what if? I mean, in a weird way, we are artificial intelligence. For the most part, we're taught everything we know until we can self-learn, and then we're told how to know it by our parents and predecessors. Or the limitations of our physical senses end up creating barriers for us, and the environment we find ourselves in provides us a narrow field of information. We don't operate well at really cold temperatures, so our environment limits our ability based on our senses. We can't see ultraviolet light, but that's all just information, right? Input, output, ones and zeros, just the words we tell ourselves, right? Maybe. The one thing we all have in common is the sophistication of our language, whether we know it or not. We use words to communicate our experiences, not only to other people but to ourselves. A constant dialogue running in our minds, telling us who we are, what we are, where we are, and how we're doing. The quality of our language can have an impact on how we experience the world. A good vocabulary can help broaden your perspectives. So even if we aren't in a computer simulation, perhaps we're already inside some kind of ancient organic simulation. Regardless, it seems we're already trapped in a linguistic prison of sorts. But if there are answers to be found within or about the simulation, it will be signs and symbols, language and words used to convey it to the masses. I invite you all to come back for the next episode, as I observe the simulation theory from different perspectives or cover other interesting topics with Toraylin Archibald.
Thank you, NeRo, for that. I am not so sure myself if this is a computer simulation or not. That sounds like we're jacked into a computer mainframe. I like your idea of an organic simulation. It plays out as if there is much more going on than what you see. You can place fate and destiny as part of the understanding of one's place in humanity as a whole when viewed as a larger-than-self perspective. Individualism takes up a big part of this life, but people move in similar patterns of existence. With society the way it is, we have much to learn about humanity as a whole, as opposed to singularities. This is where society has problems. There is no singularity, but there is separation. I like how you focus on language. I believe it to be true that from an early age we make associations with different objects, items, places, people, and more with the words that we learn. Just as we learn about the environment through trial and error, we are put into school and raised on what education system has come before us. Many slip through the cracks of that education system, yet even if you do succeed at school, there is no guarantee that there will be work in your field of expertise. As time goes on, the distance between classes perpetuates until there is discord and change is made. Everyone goes through their own path in life, but there are restrictions abound as to what one can achieve, especially if we look at the subject on a worldwide basis. In regards to the simulation theory, we can look at it in the general sense of how we are born, attend school, then go on to work in a field of employment, and then retire. Though not all achieve such, this is the standard for most of the population. These days, with technological advancements, many are plugged into the internet via personal devices. More and more people are connecting to technology as it advances. Virtual reality is upon our doorstep, and cybernetic implants are as well. In everything, we are born into a world which we must adhere to in order to survive. In regards to the simulation theory as a belief system, some might refer to different faiths and religions of the past. For example, in ancient Greece, they believed that the gods looked down on them here on earth, and directly interacted with them and manipulated the environment. Many different faiths believe in an ulterior environment which you travel to once you leave this world as a physical entity. Others believe in reincarnation, to say that they believe that we return to the earth after we pass away. One can associate many of these belief systems as having something to do with a simulation.
I invite you all to come back for the next episode as I observe the simulation theory from different perspectives or cover other interesting topics with Toraylin Archibald. The Nexus Point Podcast, brought to you by the Never Ending Network.